My name is Noura, and welcome to the Sherborne Qatar radio station's second podcast. I would like to start by welcoming you to the podcast and hoping you've had a good week so far. First of all, let's hear from Sana with our main news story. Then we'll listen to Muhammad Khalid's interview with Mr. Broom and Sana's interview as well with Mr. Hake. Then I'll go through some news and Henry will follow up with even more news. Also today, we have two new amazing recordings by Subhay Trevor and Daisy Kennard-Barr.
Hello, my name is Sana Siddiqui and I'm going to be presenting today's news story on Prince Philip. His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has died on the 9th of April 2021. He was almost 100 years old and has been married to Her Royal Highness the Queen Elizabeth since 1947, meaning they were married for 74 years, which I'm sure you know is a very long time. He was a member of the Greek-Danish royal family before joining the British royal family. He had 4 children with the Queen, of which His Royal Highness Prince Charles will be the next King of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Prince Philip was a naval officer during the Second World War, where him and his crew fought against the Kriegsmarine, the German Navy. The prince's first notable role in the Royal Navy was him venerating the battleship HMS Ramillies in the Indian Ocean, where he escorted the troops from Australia to Egypt. At the end of 1940, he was appointed to the HMS Valiant, where he sunk many Italian ships in the Mediterranean. One of his greatest battles was when he won a victory at Cape Matapan in March 1941. Prince Philip was forced to leave the Navy in 1949, when King George VI's health began deteriorating. Due to this, Elizabeth had to take on more royal responsibilities, and Prince Philip wanted to support her in that. However, throughout his life, he has still been very active with the Navy, doing more ceremonial jobs where he had given out awards and congratulated the Navy for their successes. Prince Philip in his later life was known for his humor and dedication to charities, but because of his poor health, he retired from royal duties in 2017. It is very important to remember Prince Philip for his service to the UK and his service in World War II. Rest in peace, His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. And now a piece by Daisy Kennard-Barr. Now Muhammad Khalid's conversation with Mr. Broom.
Hello, my name is Muhammad Khalid and I'm doing an interview with Mr. Broom on PE and how COVID-19 has affected PE. How are you, sir?
Hi, Mohammed. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm very well, thank you.
Okay, so how has COVID-19 affected PE lessons?
I think we're probably the subject which has been affected more than any of the other subjects. If you think about how PE lessons used to look last year, with 25 people maybe in a class, 24 people in a class, all going into those changing rooms, getting changed, going out and playing sport which might have been sort of close contact sport like rugby or football. Then go back to changing rooms and getting on your way. So the PE lessons that we have managed to do this year, while students have been in school, have looked very, very different, as I'm sure you may have experienced. We've been very careful about how we can offer practical PE, but in a safe way, because obviously there's things such as sharing equipment. We don't want people holding a piece of equipment and then passing it to somebody else, and that piece of equipment, touching the hands of everybody in the class. And even having social distancing in our classes, so that everybody is at least 1.5 meters, 2 meters apart while they're doing the physical activity, which has meant that team sports, things like basketball and football and netball, rugby, we haven't been able to do any of those because the people involved just get so close together. So huge changes, from COVID-19 on how we can teach PE.
Do you think that there is a way for students to get as active as they were in pre-COVID lessons?
Did you say in lessons, Mohammed, or?
Oh, yeah.
In lessons, I think it's a more difficult challenge. So at the moment, all pupils are at home. And so if you have a PE lesson, and as PE teachers, we're recommending something for you to do. Obviously, that's a little bit more difficult because at school we have all those ready-made facilities. We have the sports hall, the AstroTurf. We can use the atrium, and we have all we have a storeroom full of equipment that we can use to play different sports and all sorts. And so, of course, it's more difficult for people at home because they don't have access to a sports hall, or perhaps they don't have a basketball or a football or a rugby ball, or all the things that we can provide as a PE department for you to do PE. So it is more difficult for you to do exercise, but what you've got to do in these situations is make the best of what you have. And exercise can be done in a really small space. It can be done in a huge space. It can be done in a small space. If you imagine the size of a yoga mat, if you can find a place on the floor somewhere in your home for that sort of area, but just imagine the size of it. If you have that sort of size space in your apartment or wherever it is you live, then you can do some physical activity with very, very little equipment. And that's, again, something that, as the PE department have sent out the recommendations and sort of activities for pupils to try, we've tried to make sure that they're all things that everybody can do, because there's not too much equipment needed and there's not too much space needed. And so, yes, it's more difficult and there's less options, but it's definitely within everybody's capabilities to do some exercise while they're at home.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to talk with us today.
You're very welcome, Mohammed. I really enjoyed that. Thank you for having me on your podcast again. Really, really enjoyed it. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, my conversation with Mr. Hake, conducted via Teams. Good afternoon, Mr. Hake.
Hi, Sana.
So, starting us off with our first question, how do you think that the way of the change in lessons has affected the behaviour of students?
I think students are less willing to get up and act. They're less confident. They're less creative physically. And I look forward to the day when they can come back into school, because then in front of each other and seeing each other take part in the activity, a lot more people tend to get involved.
So I understand that students are going through a hard time as well, but it can also be a hard time for the teachers. So what do you think is a good way that students could make their teachers' life and teaching experience a bit better?
I would say just the communication. Communication is so important, and it's what we're all yearning for right now, in terms of we're missing our friends and families and so on. We want to see people, we want to interact more. So when the class begins and cameras are all turned off and no one's saying anything, it can be a very lonely lesson to teach, especially with the teachers all sitting in the school on their own, the students sitting at home on their own quite often. And I think communication, having fun in the lesson with cameras on is the best way.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Hake, for joining us today. and giving us insight on how the pandemic has affected your life.
Thank you.
And now a piece by Subhay Theber. Coming up next is the news on the mysterious hacker.
Hacker, beware! In today's news, someone's going around the school and hacking into people's Microsoft Teams. This has already happened in the past at the start of the year. However, from reports of our own Hala Muhammad, this infamous hacker is back and going into people's teams to mess around during lessons, disrupting classes and making teachers incredibly angry. In the past, many students in Year 9 were hacked, and the hacker posted many odd things and odd comments on multiple different accounts. Many people thought that the hacker was one of those people who claimed to be a hacker, but this was never confirmed, as we still have no idea who the hacker is. Even though the school has apparently contacted the police so that the hacker could be found, he or she never was. Well, what can you do? Well, first of all, if you know anything about the hacker, the best thing you can do is to tell a teacher when they disrupt the lesson. If it disrupts your education, meaning that hacker is actively against you. Moreover, the hacker only got into people's accounts by using the password which we all had, which was XYZ1234. So as long as your password is not that, then you're clear and not to be hacked. This is why it's important to change your password and keep your computer safety high. This is why you should never share your password with anyone, even if they are a trusted friend, because you never know what they can do with your information or who they might give it to. Also, if you are experiencing any cyberbullying or online harassment of problems, it is best to tell a friend or a teacher so that they can help you. The more you keep it to yourself, the worse it will get. Don't let negative people get to you. Cyberbullying will not be tolerated in the school. You are not alone, and there are many people for you here at the school. Thank you.
Coming up next is the sport news.
In basketball, one of the best players in the NBA, Blake Griffin, left Pistons and joined the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets team was already strong enough, and now they are becoming a formidable opponent. Their big three, which consists of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, was already strong enough, and now they are an even scarier team in the NBA. In other news, the Premier League is currently raging on with all other major teams playing to win. On Saturday, May the 1st, the day will kick off with Brighton United versus Leeds United. There are also many other games that day where major teams will be playing, but the biggest one will be Manchester United versus Liverpool, so don't miss it. Other games may include Manchester City versus Chelsea on May the 8th. Also, Harry Kane, who was the British team captain in the World Cup, has suffered a late injury after scoring twice in a Tottenham versus Everton game. He limped off the pitch with an apparent ankle problem, which has worried Tottenham fans as Kane is one of their best players, so it is important he stays healthy. If Kane does not make the recovery soon, it could be very hard for Tottenham to make a comeback. The manager of Tottenham, Jose Mourinho, was unable to say how serious the injury was, and did not say how soon Kane may be able to make a recovery, meaning for the foreseeable future of Tottenham, they will be at a significant disadvantage without one of their star players. Unfortunately, there is more bad news for athletes, as Charles Leclerc, who is a Formula 1 driver for Ferrari, has crashed during the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix final practice round. Before the crash, Charles Leclerc had an impressive round, with him being able to get the fastest lap in the whole competition. 0.01 seconds quicker than the Mercedes driver, Lewis Hamilton, which made the Ferrari fans excited for the next round, where Charles might be able to have the chance to beat Mercedes and Red Bull. However, after the crash, the possibilities of Charles beating those teams had become slim, leaving Ferrari in a rather odd position, where they almost had a chance of winning before it was snatched out of their hands. For this podcast, we would like to thank our show manager Henry, our assistant show manager Muna, our music director Jay, and our news director Khalid. Our co-chief engineers were Mohammed C. and John. Our engineers were Isa and Mohammed E. Our reporter was Isabella and Mohammed K as our editor. And our music assistants were Adam and Angelina. Finally, our presenters were Sana, Noura, and me, Henry.